welcome to Jurassic Park 3 Minute. We'll be discussing the second Jurassic Park sequel, 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're back to discuss minute 51 of Jurassic Park 3. But before we get to that, David, we're a little bit late to this story. A couple of weeks ago, Chronicle Collectibles, who have been quiet for some time, put out a product pre-order for a new Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did, and it comes with a base. I think the sign as well, the E-Stock sign on the base. And then a really neat feature is that it has removable heads. One head with the frill down and the other head with the frill. And it's really, really nicely detailed, too, because when the Dilophosaurus kind of rears its frill up, it has a snarling kind of look to it. It really shows off a feature on the animal called the subnarial gap, which is basically a gap, kind of like a gap in the two bones of the jawbone, and where the teeth kind of go upward into the skull. And it's really neat that Chronicle actually took the time to have this feature on the figure.
Yeah, but as I was saying before, like the paint looks fantastic. Detail they've gone to on it. $900 US. It's up for pre-order for. It's due second quarter of 2020, so you've got now a year or just over a year to get it paid off. We're like 16 inches tall and 19 inches long and 16 inches deep, so it's a big display stand. It's got that sign, as you said. It's posed on top of the E-Stock sign. And it comes with a little Barbasol can as well. Yeah, so it's a 1/4 scale Barbasol can. So that's how big that one is. And so I love the Dilophosaurus. I might be tempted to jump on the pre-order for this one.
So this will be your pre-order. I'm still waiting for the was it the Prime one? I think it did those. They're like $60 little minifigures. And they did the Triceratops, the T-Rex, and they're going to be doing the Brachiosaurus.
Yeah, I think that was the Prime one.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for that one to show up for pre-order.
Yeah, yep. I've still got $100 to go on my night vision goggles, so I better get that paid off and so they can get shipped out as well. I keep forgetting about that.
I'm here waiting for the Iron Studios Crouching Raptor to ship here from eBay.
Yep. Then we'll have some goodies to talk about.
Some bigger, more expensive, pricier scores to talk about coming up this summer.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't do that again. I'm sorry. I lose you. It's just me and the damn tourists.
All right, Dave, ready to get into minute 51?
Sure.
As we're in minute 50 of Jurassic Park 3, Billy had climbed down to the jungle floor and checked that the coast was clear. At the 4-second mark, we cut to a view down the river through Owen's binoculars. And he says, yeah, there's the boat. Looks in good shape too. Eric gets excited. He says, rescue boat? And Alan says, no, something left behind. At the 20-second mark, we cut back to the jungle. As Billy's taking a drink from the stream, Paul's relieving himself up on a bank. He finishes and joins the others. Billy says we stick to the plan and head for the coast. Amanda asks, you're not looking for Dr. Grant? And Billy replies, heading for the coast was Grant's idea. If he's alive, that's where he's heading. Amanda asks, well, what about Eric? And then Paul says something that I don't really want to repeat here, because it's stupid. At the 56-second mark, we cut to Eric, holding a raptor claw, and asks Grant, do you know what this is? And as the minute ends, Grant says, yeah, it's a raptor claw. I used to have one, as a fossil.
As we open, we get the final shots of, the final seconds of Paul and Amanda sort of high up in that tree, starting their descent. Then we cut to a view through the binoculars looking down at the CG River, and there's a boat beached on one side that appears to be with what appears to be several crates sort of submerged in the water all the way around and a heap of junk and debris. But it's, as we sort of look back, we see it's at the base of a pretty tall canyon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one was actually done on a set in front of a blue screen. It's one of the few uses of like just a blue screen and small set. It's actually like, I wonder if it might have been a pickup shot or something, because the set is like so small. It's like a 7 foot by 7 foot set, just a tree and basically a backdrop and some ferns and stuff, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then the opposite side of them is a blue screen. They're staring at the blue screen.
Yeah, we'll have to put the photo on the post it up when this episode goes up, because it's real funny just seeing them two standing in this little patch of grass and a very small jungle segment. It just goes to show how much this shot's been sort of added digitally.
Mm-hmm.
The background, of course, you can see it's a bit fuzzy and not the best CG, but even just the foreground, all the stuff around them, how much that's been added. But the boat itself down the river, this is our first, from memory, our first evidence or proof that InGen was working there after the dinosaurs had been released. Yes, we had the fence around the worker village, but here we're seeing cages out in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Unless this was some sort of access point from the lab to a harbour, or this is the route they took animals previously, and just they when they evacuated this boat was never taken back to the lab or back to the harbour, or it was at the harbour and got washed inland with the hurricane. Again, another one of those things we just will never know, but there's more cages littering the ground here than what would fit on that boat, so they wouldn't have drifted in the storm, in the tide or anything like that, so it's a wonder how all this gets here.
Well, I believe that the idea of an InGen, harbor kind of comes from concept art of the attack scene from the Spinosaurus attack, where we see the crane, and then it's got like a basically a wooden dock with a bunch of small boats around it. And I like to think that that the barge here and the cages had something to do with just something, not, well, as obviously said, something left behind, but it was something that InGen was using to basically transport from the laboratories area downriver to probably a larger harbor where they would be shipped, presumably to Isla Nublar.
Yeah, and I think we talked when we were back in the kennel of just, obviously these animals would have been kept for a few months, made sure they were doing well, but then got shipped over. Just practically, you're not going to ship a 9-ton Triceratops or something like that from Sauna to Nublar. You're going to send them over there and as small as possible, just so you can either stack the cages on the boat or be a lot less handling involved anyway.
But we also know from, at least it was meant to be implied as such, that InGen released their animals into their park at a younger age, because both in the novel and originally scripted for the film, Lex would encounter a baby Triceratops, which she would then ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we had the juvenile T-Rex in the novel as well. It's sort of, I suppose we can talk more about when we get to the boat itself in later minutes, but it might be just trespasser clouding my thoughts here, but I'm pretty sure it's implied later or somewhere production that the boat itself was used for monitoring or studying the animals in the wild, and that's why the cage is there, and it's got it's just like the cage on the high height. It's sort of a safety thing for anyone in the boat, but I think I'm thinking more of the Emily from Trespasser. Without sailing around and spying the animals from offshore. Also, it being at the base of this canyon, I wonder if this might have been Grant seeing this and going, okay, well, this is what we can use that parachute for. If they can't find a way down, they're going to have to send Billy down to get it and sort of see if he can get the boat moving and go downstream more to a place where they can actually all get down to it. Because it's pretty rough looking terrain here to get down there.
Mm.
But Grant says there's a boat right along the bank, and it looks in good shape too, and hands the binoculars off to Eric, and Eric sort of lights up at this and says rescue boat, and Grant sort of stands to walk past and said, nah, something left behind. Again, and then again here, like 8 years later, this boat's still floating, and all this stuff's still in the water after countless storms and everything else that would have hit the island.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I suppose that had it really not just, if it's just kind of like wedged there on a rock or something, it's not really going to move, it's not really going to go anywhere, you know?
Yeah. It must be, you'd assume it's far enough inland that it's not tidal, that it's not going to raise and lower off the tides, but I don't, with the size Sauna is, I don't know if there'd be any bodies of water like this that wouldn't be tidal. You get sort of further upstream, unless there's some sort of, maybe not man-made levee or something further down that sort of keeps the water up here. Because especially if you're going to have a harbour inland like that marina that we see later, you're going to want water to stay there if you've got boats tied up while the tide goes out, especially if it's only a small river like this. But that's something I haven't thought about before. But we cut behind them as they turn to walk away, and they walk inland from there, and you can again see that massive canyon behind them, and the
and it's interesting because the canyon kind of seems to split, and in the further background, it just goes back into normal mountains, whereas on the other side, closer to the actors, it's basically a sheer cliff going right into the river, and presumably further off screen someplace would be the aviary, which we see no hint of from this wide shot.
Yeah. Well, as they turn to walk away, you can see the bottom of the canyon's really foggy, and it makes me wonder how Grant's seen the boat. There must be a patch further down where the fog isn't as thick, but you sort of here again, you're getting the signs of this fog still sort of clinging to the low-lying areas of the island and down above this river. But we cut to a stream as Billy's taking a drink from the water, and on the far side of the bank, Paul's going to the toilet. Now, there was that photo from a cutscene that came out a while ago that showed Paul urinating on the side of the bank. I thought that was a cutscene itself. I didn't realise that this was actually in this film, unless this is a different version of the film itself.
No, this is actually in the film. It's it's very brief in the film. I mean, it's probably a couple frames, as you can see here, that you see him actually going, you know, and then Billy drinking out of the water. It's almost a blink if you miss it kind of thing.
But I seem to think there was some fan laughter that Paul was urinating into the water and Billy was then drinking it. But the water's going the wrong way. Billy's upstream, and on the other side of the creek from where he is.
It's just kind of the funny thing because the stream is going towards Paul, not from Paul.
Yeah.
But if you just take a screen cap of the image, of the scene and show, and you got Billy drinking the water and Paul peeing, you can't tell which direction the water's going. So it looks like Paul's urine is going towards Billy.
Oh, that explains it all. All right.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's funny if you don't explain it.
Yeah. Yep. I suppose the real issue here is he's weeing uphill. But men know not to do that. You can get it all over your shoes. But
he doesn't seem the real outdoorsy type.
No. But Paul finishes and sort of hops back across the rocks upstream to where Billy is, and Amanda's there waiting for him. And sort of Billy says we stick to the plan, head for the coast. And Amanda asks, you're not going to look for Dr. Grant? And Billy says, following the coast was Alan's idea. If he's still alive, that's where he's heading. So they're not going to try and find each other. They're just going to try and get to the coast and hope they meet up along the way somewhere or find the same beach. It's a little bit of a problematic idea, but I suppose if one of them gets rescued, then they can tell the rescuers that there's other people that should be on the beach as well, make them a lot easier to find. But Paul agrees, but Amanda doesn't and asks, what about Eric? And we get some dialogue here which I'm not a fan of. Paul says, Eric's a smart kid, he probably knows he stands the best chance by the coast. He figures all the big dinosaurs are in the centre of the island. Which, I don't know if it's just a callback to Hammond's office where our satellite infrared show all the carnivores on the interior of the island. If it's playing to that, or... Because it's just, Paul's just saying that Eric knows that being on the coast is the best idea, even though we've just seen he's spent the last 8 weeks, to the best of our knowledge, in the very centre of the island at this lab.
Well, the other thing is that for some reason Eric then contradicts Hammond's infrared, and Eric never really says how much of the island he explored. So it's kind of interesting because he makes this worried comment that, and I think this is in the next minute, that the closer you get to the coast, the bigger things get. Well, and so that would kind of imply that big carnivores are on the coast, which completely contradicts what Hammond's pre-established infrared has shown.
Yeah, well, Eric says the closer you get to water, and we know from the map of Sauna and that there's this large canyon system and lake system, it seems, in the middle of the island. So, but yeah, it does sort of ask that question. Now, maybe again 4 years after those satellites were taken, maybe there's been some change, especially if DPG is to be believed, and the Spinosaur and all that's been released and grown on the island after the Lost World, and it's sort of changing animals' territories and that sort of thing, nesting sites.
Well, another thing that changed after the beginning of the movie of The Lost World was that the territories established in that movie had been altered by the presence of the hunters and the gatherers on the island. Simply moving the infant changed the Rex's territory, which I'm sure changed other predators' territories.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to mention that because I wonder if even just the fact that the baby was taken from the nest, if that would then cause the Rexes to change nesting locations. Even just the consequences of the roundup itself, capturing animals on that game trail, if that would scare certain animals away from that area. And as we've seen, the Tyrannosaurs got almost all the way to the worker village, so that might, even though they're at the time they're top dog and probably aren't really worried about the raptors or all that as well. But yeah, you just got to wonder how much of that the nesting sites and that got thrown into chaos by that operation. And here we are 4 years later, and there's sort of things have moved around, or it just, again, we don't see any nests in this film apart from the raptor nest and the Tyrannosaur nest last movie. We don't see any herbivores nesting at all, which is a shame. But Paul looks to Billy, sort of asks right, looking for confirmation from Billy, but he sort of takes a moment and replies slowly, sure. And then they set off into the jungle. Billy's acting a bit cagey here. I don't know if he just doesn't want to confirm it, or if I don't know what's going on. I think he's still not a fan of the Kirby's.
That, and I think he just doesn't. I think he feels like Paul doesn't really know what he's talking about, and he doesn't want to kind of scare him by making him feel like large animals would seek water. Yeah. Because that is something that Roland does bring up in The Lost World, was the lagoon was a heavily used water source and out in the open, and basically that kind of spoke to him that it'd be something that large predators would be attracted to. You know?
Well, there's another thing just with that of the tidal stuff. Like if if the boat went far enough inland for that water to become fresh water and not salt water, for the animals to be able to drink from it and have the captain come back to that same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the shot itself, I think, was filmed across from the port on Hawaii. I can't even say it. Hawaii.
Yeah, it was. It was filmed, I think, in the same exact harbor that the Lost. It was filmed out on the opposite side of the same exact harbor that Spielberg shot the wave crashing over the breakwater.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's it. If you turn the camera away from Malcolm looking over the railing at the coastline, you'd see all that there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when we cut back to Eric and Grant walking through the jungle, and Eric holds up the claw and asks Alan if he knows what this is. And as I was saying before, thanks to HD, we get to see the 720 on Alan's arm, which I'm guessing AM 720 at night. I don't think there'll be this much light.
Mm-hmm.
But as the minute ends, Grant takes the claw and says, "Yeah, it's a raptor claw. I used to have one," which. I know a lot of fans will always question why the hell do you throw that thing away in Jurassic Park, especially with the park on the fritz. Or I suppose he didn't know it was on the fritz at that time, but it wasn't going to stop paleontology. No one learned about the park after that.
I think it was more symbolic for him than anything. It was basically meant to show him giving up his love of dinosaurs and simply accepting the concept of being a family person. Of course, that didn't work out later in the sequels, but I think that's what it was meant to be implied as in the movie.
Okay.
Or metaphorically, or whatever.
Well, yeah. You don't have kids running around with scissors. You imagine kids running around for raptor fossil.
Technically, he could get in a lot of trouble, depending on... I think it was implied that Hammond was sponsoring him, but still... You could get a lot of trouble from... Because he also worked for the Museum of the Rockies, and he could get in trouble from them for basically stealing fossils from the dig site.
Well,
and then he never brings it back.
Yeah, I don't think paleontologists sit there and if they find a Tyrannosaur skull, they just take a tooth out of it and wrap it around their neck as a necklace. Or yeah, it's odd that he's carrying that thing around.
Not only that, but like the skeletons he dug up in both Snakewater in the first movie and at Fort Peck in the third.
Yeah,
they were nearly complete skeletons, and that is extremely, extremely rare. So, I mean, that's like basically a career-making find, and he goes and steals from it.
He's gonna flub the paperwork when it goes in and everyone's cataloguing the piece and where's the left toe? Where's the claw? Lost?
I left it on a dinosaur island in Costa Rica.